Okay, hey everybody. So we're back, and we're going to change things up a little bit here in the 186 class, and I'll start having some guest speakers, and they'll talk about their stories and what they did and how they got where they are and what they've accomplished and things of that nature. I've got a couple photographers lined up and a couple other people lined up. So this came about because a lot of students several years ago started asking me, well, you know, Mr. Rentschler, tell us your story, or tell us how, how you ended up here, or what your journey has been. So I'll keep it a little shorter here on the video for you rather than in face-to-face. We'd go into a little bit more detail. But, basically I had kind of I ran around with a camera a lot when I was a little kid. In fact, my first camera is sitting right here on a desk right next to where I do this in my basement studio. This is my first camera as a little kid, little waist level Kodak Brownie Hawkeye. I kept it all these years because it was a fun toy for me to have as a kid. Then my dad bought a better camera, and then a better camera, and then I started playing with stuff, and really enjoyed. I shot a lot of black and white film when I was young and processed it in the the bathroom sink in the hallway bathroom because it had a fan and I could make it dark in there. Excuse me. So, that was the start. Did a lot of stuff in high school, and then went to Western Michigan University and basically studied radio and television and mass media broadcasting, but still continued to do a lot of still photography. One, because one of the guys across the hall in my dorm had a nice camera and did some photography. The other was one of my professors, who I just recently found out passed away about 6 months ago, Dr. Pagel at Western Michigan University, and really encouraged us. Even though I was in a video production class, he wanted to know what we were shooting with our still cameras. It's just kind of a side fun thing, and then he would look at our work and critique it and give us ideas and pointers and subject matter and things. So he was a real strong mentor for me to you're a visual professional, you should be practicing all the time, so where's your still camera, kind of thing. So I started shooting a lot more in college, really in my second year in college, than I thought I ever would. So then I, graduated, and I got a job at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, and I was like the media coordinator. I was like a media specialist. I did still photography, I did video. I had a learning lab. I actually worked for the School of Nursing. I had a learning lab, and I had a lot of equipment in there, and videos and slideshows and things of that nature, and I kept a library of stuff like that. And then I had three like fake hospital rooms. I had 3 classrooms set up like hospital rooms that I ran, and students would have come in there and practice using the equipment and run through various checklists of things. And then one of the things I set up in another room was a video interview. So they would, how the students would interview a patient to find out their medical history. So I started doing some things like that, and then I worked with a couple other departments in the hospital because I was involved with teaching. So I worked with a couple other departments doing some video projects. I worked on some brochures and a lot of things like that, and helped out with a number of other projects around the hospital. And then just kind of got tired of it because it was very universal. Everybody got the same pay raise, no matter how hard you worked. Excuse me, I'm not tired. So I just kind of got tired of that idea. And I went to work for a video production company. It was a bad decision on my part to do that. I worked for that production company for, I don't know, it was about 5 or 6 months. I hated almost every day of it. All I did was throw money at problems. It wasn't creative. It wasn't fun. It was just not a lot of really good people that I was working with. You know, they were all a bunch of backstabbers, and everybody's trying to get ahead and make their mark, and it just wasn't a good, conducive, fun environment to work in like I thought it was going to be. So I left that, and I rounded up as much money as I could get my hands on, and I started buying some equipment. I had a 1965 Mustang convertible that I sold to buy camera equipment, and I went to see an old friend of mine who was the manager of a ski shop in Birmingham, Bavarian Village Ski Shop in Birmingham. Now I know a lot of people because I'm a very avid snow skier. I taught for years and I patrolled, so I know a lot of people in the ski business. So I went to see Jim, and I said, hey, I need a part-time job. I want to start my own business. I can't work Saturdays or Sundays. I'll be doing weddings and stuff like that. And he said, hey, you know, can you start right now? So I ended up working at the ski shop for a couple of seasons, part-time. It was great. It was a real flexible schedule. I was one of the only people that could work during the daytime during the week. So that worked out really well in my favor. I got some raises. It was, you know, I was a really entrusted employee. So that worked out really great to have that side gig, always have enough money coming in to pay my rent kind of thing. And I started my business. I started doing weddings and some other small commercial jobs and things of that nature. You know, handed out a lot of business cards, talked to a lot of people, started building my portfolio. And then, I met a person at the ski shop and ended up selling him a pair of ski boots. And he was a sound recording guy for doing videos and films. And I found out I was a cameraman, and he hooked me up with some video jobs. And we worked on a couple of pretty good projects together over the years. So it was about meeting people and, you know, discussing about what you do and what you want to do and where your passions are and stuff like that. The assistant manager of the ski shop was getting married, so I ended up shooting his wedding. Now, his wife worked for a large construction company in the Detroit area, and they were going to start building the Palace of Auburn Hills, the big palace where all the concerts and the basketball was. They just recently tore it down. But she said we needed documentarian type photos, somebody to come out at least once a month and photograph the whole job site and put those all in a book and organize them and write little sentence about where the camera was and all that kind of stuff to keep a photographic record of the construction of the building. And I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And so that's how I got started in the construction industry. And I did a lot of that kind of work, documentarian type of photography work. And that's where I learned to fly. I started doing aerial photos of the palace. That was my second aerial photo flight job, was doing the palace. And that got me kind of hooked on flying and doing all the aerial photography that I did for 25 years. So, you know, it's kind of that idea of work begets work. You know, the more you work, the more you work. And you're always selling yourself. That's why we had that unit with Dr. Lehman talking about the psychology of selling. You know, you're always selling yourself. You're always putting your business card out there. You always say, hey, you know, if you need something, call me. Here's my card, kind of thing. And, you know, you're always stopping by companies and knocking on the door and that kind of thing. And, you know, through working with the palace, you know, I did work for people that laid tile, for electricians, for the iron workers, Local 25, the iron workers. I did tons of work for them over the years. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many buildings I went to that were being, you know, built with steel, and I photographed them. That led to a job working for the Iron and Steel News magazine. And I photographed, you know, all over a 2 or 3 state area of steel buildings. You know, I did hundreds and hundreds of articles on steel buildings. And then that led to a job with the American Association of Heating and Cooling Engineers, and I did work for their magazine. And, you know, it just, work goes on, and you start finding all kinds of avenues that people need photographs for. Ended up working for the Detroit Water and Sewer Department for years and years and years. doing, documentarian type photography, but I was using the big 4x5 view camera. That was like $1,000 a day to go out for the Detroit Water and Sewer Department. That was a really good payday. They had really tight specifications on what they wanted in their photos. So, it's that just, again, that whole idea of the more people you meet, the more people you meet, and the more work you get, the more work you get. And of course I started putting myself out there and knocking on doors and getting more work and getting more work and getting more work. And, pretty soon we were coasting along pretty good with a lot of regular work coming in. I was shooting 2 to 3 days a week, pretty much all day, either driving or whatever. And so, the trajectory of that was pretty good. And then, the whole digital revolution started and people started being able to, oh no, I'll just do that myself kind of thing. And a lot of my bread and butter type $100, $200, $300 jobs went shh. And all the big jobs are still there, but all those small little jobs all went away because everybody was doing it themselves. They had a decent enough digital camera, a decent enough computer, and a decent enough printer now. And when those three things hit and the cost came down of everything, a lot of my jobs started going away. So I started looking at, what else can I do? So I was, my daughter was going to a charter school, Holly Academy, and kindergarten. And I would always stay around and help the kindergarten teacher because she was short, like 5 feet tall, and I'm 6'2". Hang stuff up high in her room and stuff like that. And I always stick around and help out, or I'd come a little bit earlier with my daughter and help the teacher put up stuff high. And I went by an open room and there was a guy there taking computers out of boxes. And I said, hey, do you need a hand? I got an hour before I have to be anywhere. So I said, yeah, come in. So I just started helping and volunteering, taking computers out of boxes and helping them put them together. And he goes, so you know about this stuff? I go, yeah, I know a little bit, It's like, okay. So we started putting computers on desks, and plugging them all in and hooking all the keyboards and the mice up. I mean, nothing special, but just somebody had some interest in it and some enthusiasm, and he was like, great. And that went on for, I don't know, a few weeks or so, or maybe a month or two, and he was like, well, can you come in every so often and volunteer and help out? I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And that went on for a couple of weeks, and he said, this is stupid, why don't you just work here? So I started working there part-time, helping out with all the computers. And a lot of it was just kind of manual labor, hooking them up, putting them together, changing out a monitor that went bad in a room, or, plugging them in and running all the wires nice and neat in the classrooms, and just all kind of maintenance things with the computers, In the summertime, I would take them outside and clean them all out and blow them all out with compressed air and get all the dust and dirt out of them, and they saw that I was really doing a lot of work, and they wanted me to stay, and I learned more and more, and pretty soon I set up the wireless network inside the building with where the antennas are and all that kind of stuff. You got to chart it all out, what the over coverage of the antennas, the area that the antenna will cover, just a whole bunch of little stuff like that. Then I started running the soundboard in the auditorium, and then that fateful day when the principal or the director of the school came in and said, the second grade teacher's throwing up. And I was like, yeah, so I got work to do. What's that to me? And he said, no, because you have a background check and you have a degree and you're certified, you have to go in the room because we can't get a sub. And you're the only one here that can go in the room so that the day counts for the students. I was like, oh. And I said, there's no way I'm going in a second grade classroom. And he goes, you have to. And my buddy that I was working for that hired me, Tim, turns around in his chair and he goes, oh, you'll be great, and turns back around. I go, okay, great. So I go into the second grade classroom, and I didn't know what to do, but there was stuff on the desk there, and there was a couple of moms in the room helping out. And I kind of took my time. I took a little break, and the kids were having a snack, and then I started class. And that performer in me, because I'd performed since high school and all through college, and I studied voice and took voice lessons and sang in multiple different performing groups all through high school and college. I guess that performer in me just kind of kicked in, and I ended up having a wonderful time in the classroom. And the one mom came up to me or actually both moms came up to me at the end of the day. I'm filling out the substitute teacher report. You got to write down what you got done, what you didn't get done. And the one mom said to me, she goes, "Wow, you're really good." And the other mom said to me, "So how long you been a substitute teacher?" And I said, "Today was my first day." And the other mom looked me right square in the eye and she said, "You should do this all the time. You're really good. You're one of the best teachers I've ever seen." And I was floored. I was absolutely stunned at that comment. And I was like, okay. So I talked to a few people at the school, and they were like, "Yeah, we heard amazing things about you. That you're really good with the students, and they like you, and everything else." So I started substitute teaching all the time, and that became my side gig. I was still doing photography, but I just started looking at doing that as a good side hustle, to substitute teach, continue to work at Holly Academy a little bit part-time, and continue with my photography and my video stuff. Eventually, I just fell in love with teaching so much that I decided that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I saw an ad they needed a teacher. Now, I'm kind of condensing this a little bit for the video here. I had done some community ed teaching where I taught a couple photography classes for the general public. I was a fireman medic for 10 years. I taught CPR to police departments and other fire departments and stuff for everybody to get recertified. Like I said, I was a ski instructor for years, so I'd always been a teacher, but I didn't think of myself like that. So I saw an ad to teach one photography class at Mott Community College, and I said, "Oh, I can do that. I've got my degrees and I'm qualified, and I've ran a business for 20 some years, photography business for 20, 25 years. I can do that." And I went and interviewed, and they said, "Go down to personnel." And I said, okay. So I went down to personnel, signed a bunch of paperwork, and then they sent me to a lab, and they cut off a big hunk of your hair to do the drug test. And 5 or 6 weeks later, it was in the fall, so 5 or 6 weeks later, I'm teaching my first photography class at Mott Community College as a part-time instructor. And I taught there one class a semester for a couple of years, then 2 classes a semester, then a couple semesters I got 3 classes. Excuse me. And this is great. I like this, at the college level. This is a lot of fun. I can really dig deep on a lot of subject matter and really have a lot of fun with these people. And I got 20-year-olds to 60-year-olds in classes. So this is great. It's a lot of fun. So then the guy that had the job that hired me, Fred Cross, Fred retired. And my boss at the time, Mary Cusack, my dean at the time, said, "Hey, you would think about interviewing for the full-time job." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I ended up interviewing for the full-time job. There were 12 people in my interview. There were 3 on each side and then 6 across the front, and I'm in like this. And it was pretty intense. You had to present your portfolio and you had to do a teaching demonstration. And then one of the things that they really liked, that I found out later, was that all the pictures in my portfolio, while other people had prettier looking images than I did, I only showed images that were work. I only showed images that I was hired for. I didn't show any pretty sunsets. Well, I showed one. I didn't show any beautiful landscapes or anything like that. Pretty much every picture in my portfolio was work. And then I showed kind of a day in the life. So I went through a photo shoot, one day at a photo shoot. what that entailed, the good and the bad. And but the biggest thing that they liked, two things. One, that every picture was work, so that I could relate that into the classroom. And the second thing that I found out that they liked was that I had a lot of street credibility, so to speak, because I run a business for a long period of time. So I knew, up from down, left from right kind of thing. So that part was really, really good. And the second thing was that these interviews, or these presenting your portfolio and doing the teaching demonstrations, were timed events. You were given 15 minutes. Well, I practiced many times what I was going to say and the order I was going to do everything. And so these are 15 minutes. I finished both of my presentations at 14 minutes and 45 seconds. Because if you went over, they just cut you off. Well, you didn't want that. That was bad. Because that means you weren't in control and you weren't paying attention to the time and you hadn't rehearsed your presentation. So I finished both of my presentations just under the time element. And I found out later that they both really liked that a lot, because that means that I actually prepared something specifically for this event. So be prepared. So what does all of this mean? So one of the things that as far as my path was that I never said no. I was always willing to try things. I kind of had to be forced to go into that second grade classroom, because initially I said no. I said, you're crazy. But I never said no. I always figured I could figure it out. I had to do some food photography one time, and I was terrified. I remember clearly being in the bathroom before we were going to start to shoot, throwing cold water on my face, going, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But I just relied on the basics, what my depth of field is going to be, what lens I'm going to use, my light fall off, inverse square law. I just kind of started relying on the basics, and all that stuff kind of starts to come to you. And the pictures came out great, and I made a lot of money that day. But I'd never shot food before in my life. So that ended up working out really, really well. But I just, I'm open to try it. Let's see what I can do, right? That's why I learned to fly and do aerial photography. What if I said, no way I'm getting in a little plane like that? Are you crazy? Never had a problem in the 25 years that I flew. Never had an engine failure. Never had a real close call or anything like that. Flying's pretty safe. If I'd have said no, that whole area of my life would have never been exposed to aviation. So, that was a really cool time in my life, and I'm really glad that I got to do that. I got to do some other things because of my firefighter background. I could wear an air pack. I could go into confined spaces. So I shot for the Detroit Water and Sewer Department in confined spaces with chlorine gas. Now, there aren't many people that can do that. So that's one of the reasons they like me. So yeah, I can go in an air pack. I know how to operate one. I'm a certified firefighter. Here's my credentials. They're like, oh, okay, cool. I got to work on some training fires with houses burning under a trained, controlled environment. I was in there taking pictures, running video. So I got to do that a few times, and that was a lot of fun as well. So I just kept my mind and my creativity open to try new things, whatever that was going to come about, photographically speaking. I worked on some ski films. I was a film loader. I was a pack mule. I just carried stuff around for the cameraman. I did a lot of things like that just to stay in the business, so to speak, of doing things. And here's a new one coming up. I've ordered 10 drones for the college to have, and so I've got to learn to fly them, and I have to get my commercial drone pilot's license, which I'm going to do this summer. So again, why not? Let's try some new things. Let's keep moving, pushing the boundaries a little bit further. So, be a lifelong learner. Always be open to trying things and experimenting and learning, and see what you can come up with, creatively, photographically. and expand your horizons and things a little bit. You guys have heard me before. I never thought I'd be doing this. I never thought I'd be a professor at a college. It was never on my radar. But things have a way of showing the direction that you should go in. It took years to become a content expert, because that's what a professor is. For me to learn the camera and lenses and how to operate all this stuff and get it right. Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, but I was fortunate. My wife had a good job, and I always had some side money coming in. So even though I had some down times with not making a lot of money photographically, we were still okay financially. So having a little bit of a side hustle was always kind of a good thing for me. That model worked out well for me, because that was always just part-time. I could always push that aside a little bit. So that always worked out really well. Everywhere I went, I showed my portfolio. I carried it around with me everywhere I went. I showed it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Because it's hard for people to say no when you just hand a book in front of them and say, here, well, look at some pretty pictures, and you start folding pages. People tend to go, oh, okay, cool. So I did a lot of political stuff too. I was with a lot of political candidates. Because I was at one event, and then I met somebody who coordinated the event, and they were like, hey, do you do this stuff? Can you do this all the time? I'm like, sure, whatever you want. I don't know, I never shot a political event in my life before. But, she liked some of the pictures, and she called me, and I ended up, doing stuff all the way to when Dan Quayle was Vice President of the United States. So it's funny how work begets work. And the more people you meet, the more jobs you have, the more work you have, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a struggle to keep everything balanced, all the balls up in the air at the same time. But at the end of the day, it ended up being a really good career move and a really good path. And then I ended up here, and teaching at Mott Community College, and it's been one of the best, most fun, enjoyable, rewarding, both mentally, creatively, and financially. For me to have gotten involved with. So I'm certainly grateful for all the opportunities that I've had. But the biggest thing is, opportunity knocks, but you have to open the door. You have to go through. And so, what does that mean? When you get opportunities, you have to bring it. Okay? And you have to bring your best. And, you can't flounder around. I mean, I had people coming in my room when I was a substitute teacher just to watch me, because they were like, wow, you're really good. You got to bring it. You got to bring your A game when you get an opportunity to go do something. You've got to pour your whole heart and soul into it and do it at a high level. And people will notice, and then people will want you to do that again and do that more for me, that kind of thing. So that's the biggest thing was you got to bring it. And how do you get ready to bring it? You have to prepare yourself, right? And you prepare yourself by the things you're doing now. You're going to college. Your job is to get as much out of this as you can, not just to get by and pass an assignment. That's not the point, right? The point is for you to get as much out of this as you can. Ask questions. Be a pain. Is this good enough? How can I make this better? What'd you think of that? Ask questions. Professors get tired of answering them, but we'll always answer them. And that's a good thing. So, get prepared. Do as much homework as you can. Always do more than the minimum required. Always do way more. Learn, be a learner, be a sponge, soak up all you can. And things have turned out really well for me in this journey that I've been on. And I can't complain. I'm looking for what the next chapter is going to be. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to keep an open mind and see what that brings. I've been talking to some people about helping out on some of these travel photography clubs and shoots and things where I'd go along and be one of the instructors. So I've been looking at doing that kind of thing maybe in the future. So that's it. There's really two things, right? That it's been about not saying no and always trying to do my best that I possibly can do in that situation. And when you get an opportunity, you have to take it. and you have to put 100% effort, into that into that situation. You got to bring it, and you have to find out what you're capable of doing, and then go after it. And always be, always be a learner. Always try new things and find out and ask questions and be interested in your craft or in your field, whatever direction you end up going in, right? Don't just think this is good enough and I'm just going to stay here. Always be expanding and pushing the boundaries and see where you can go, because you never know, because I never thought I would be here, okay? All right, cool. Been fun. The title of this one is What About Bob? And, again, the same thing, a couple sentences, a paragraph, what you got out of this, okay? All right, cool. See you next time. Bye.